Mr. Minamitsu Nishimura, President and founder of the United Peace International, UPI, the Honorable Nobel Peace Laureate, Ms. Jody Williams of the United States, Ms. Leima Gubowi, Liberia, and Ms. Tawakkol Karman, Yemen, and Shirin Ebadi, Iran, Ms. Rigoberta Menchu-Tum, Guatemala, and Kailash Satyarthi. And I'd like to also thank President Jose Ramos Horta, who had sent video messages, with whom I have been working very closely. I'd like to really send my deepest respect and thanks for their continuing hard work and their inspiring leadership. Let's give them big applause. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, konnichiwa, good afternoon. At the outset, I am incredibly honored to address this UPI SDGs Governance Summit 2023 here in this beautiful and time-honored city of Tokyo. Indeed, we stand on the precipice of a period of pronounced change, and it will have profound implications for all people and our planet and the future of humanity. My sincere gratitude goes to the United Peace International, UPI, for assembling such luminaries in the fields of peace and security, human rights, and global development. I am particularly honored to have an opportunity to address important leaders and key stakeholders like yourselves at a time of great significance for accelerating the achievement of 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals through partnership and action. I salute each and every one of you today, and I count on your continuing commitment. Now, more than ever, we require multilateral solutions underpinned with cooperation and solidarity to empower the leaders of both today and tomorrow to ensure a peaceful and sustainable future for all. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, actually, we are living in an unprecedented era of new interconnected crises and elevated global uncertainty. Great power rivalry is intensifying, particularly between the United States and China. And the war caused by the Russian illegal invasion against Ukraine, alongside renewed horrors in the Middle East, in Gaza, represent one of the most dangerous moments for global peace and security in decades with a profound humanitarian impact. COVID-19 is still here with us, but less of crisis, after having caused extraordinary disruptions to our health systems, killing more than 7 million people. Almost 300 million people got infected. It caused extraordinary disruptions to our health systems, economies, societies, and way of life since early 2020. At the same time, our planet is on fire, both literally and figuratively, as climate crisis is deepening with the surging temperatures, burning wildfires, and raging floods. Indeed, July 2023 was Earth's hottest month ever. Global crises such as conflict, pandemic, and climate change have underlined our interconnectedness. They have also made it clear that we need global solutions in response. Not a single country in this world can address these global issues. And such solutions must be rooted in partnership and inclusivity and centered on enhancing health, security, sustainability, and prosperity for all people and everywhere. From cities to villages, from upper-income countries to the least developed, from countries plagued by war to those at peace, humanity is facing cascading, intertwined, and complex challenges that are impacting all of us. Under this backdrop of expanding conflict, public health threats, planetary crisis, and easing change, we have also made progress in key areas. And I'm still confident that we have invaluable opportunities to change the world for the better. But to do that so, we must redouble our efforts to live up to guiding ideals of the United Nations Charter and its pledge to save our succeeding generations from the scourge of war. We must enhance the protection of civilians during conflict, as well as the refugees that those conflicts make. We must strive to better emphasize prevention as a mechanism to address armed conflict and suffering. Ladies and gentlemen, we must recommit again to upholding and protecting human rights, as well as seeking truth and reconciliation. Today, I will speak to you about how we can synergize global governance in this era of increased uncertainty. We can achieve this through sound policies and action, the power of cooperation and partnerships, building peace and sustainability in our communities, and the driving sense of global citizenship and solidarity with others. But all stakeholders must elevate their efforts in order to achieve UPI's noble vision of a world united in peace through strong systems of global governance that focus on the shared well-being of all people and the planet. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as the 8th Secretary General of the United Nations, as well as a child of war, I often call myself a child of war who later became a man of peace. I believe that the United Nations is extremely important to me, as the organization exemplifies the values and principles that we should all espouse to replicate. And for me, this is not abstract. I have seen the bravery of UN peacekeepers, protecting civilians, heroism of aid workers responding to disasters, and the courage of health specialists providing care in the most remote of places. I have also seen the best of the United Nations during the worst of times for myself, my family, and my own country, Korea. Indeed, I grew up in Korea during a time when the embers still burned from the Korean War. In 1950, I was just a 6-year-old boy. As I said, I was a child of war. I saw the destruction it caused firsthand and felt the stunted development it brought on the Korean Peninsula. Just after Korean War, we largely subsided on food and medicine provided by the United Nations. UNICEF provided key humanitarian assistance, milk, even toys for children. UNESCO gave us textbook. We didn't have any printing office to print the text. UNESCO provided all these facilities. We studied with the textbook provided by UNESCO. If you go to UNESCO in Paris, those textbooks on which I had studied are displayed in UNESCO. Now, it was iconic, again, iconic UN flag. That was a symbol and sense of hope for all of us, omnipresent in Korea during those dark times that shined bright as a beacon of hope. Indeed, it was the UN's guiding ideals and peace and security, human rights and development that helped save Korea and its people like myself. And these defining experiences of seeing the vital work of the United Nations helped me become a man of peace and eventually the Secretary General of the United Nations starting from 2007 until 2016. Indeed, I grew up in Korea during a time of when all these difficulties happened. It was a guiding principle of the United Nations for peace and security, human rights and development that helped Korea. And these defining experiences of seeing the vital work of the UN as a child of war helped me become a man of peace, eventually Secretary General. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1945, as the ashes of the war lifted, the United Nations was conceived to provide an essential international forum for maintaining global peace and security. Since then, the UN has offered all nations and peoples an alternative vision to the bombs, guns, and destruction of World War II. This vision was and is anchored by the guiding belief that diplomacy and cooperation offer the international community a better way forward than war and conflict. And so, 78 years later, the UN remains the preeminent global governance for every country in the world to address serious global issues together through cooperation. During this time, the United Nations has tirelessly pursued its three interconnected pillars of peace and security, development, and human rights. This has improved humanity and our planet and provided light for Korean people and many other people in the developing world. But serious challenges remain. Conflict is expanding, while the global security architecture has broken down, as seen in Ukraine, Gaza, Myanmar, and elsewhere. Human rights earned through blood of our forefathers and institutionalized through a handful of key documents, such as Universal Declaration of Human Rights, are under threat from repressive regimes here in many countries, xenophobia and closed nationalism. And development and humanitarian funds are being slashed just when we need them most, as our climate is changing in unprecedented and dangerous ways. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Despite such challenges, the United Nations is actively undertaking key transformational projects to realize its vision and build on its previous essential work in the field of development. Previously, the UN Millennium Development Goals, which is known as SDGs, drastically improved human welfare around the world. The SDGs, established in the year of 2000, beginning of the new millennium, represented 8 guiding goals for the world to achieve by 2015. Extreme poverty rate have been cut in half by 2010. This represents over 1 billion people and is an incredible achievement. But this was possible because Chinese government was able to lift at least 400 million people out of poverty. That's why statistically it has grown up. But there are still many countries around the world who are still suffering from abject poverty. And also, the under 5 mortality and maternal death rate have been halved. And since 1990, 2.1 billion people have benefited from access to improved sanitation, and over 2.6 billion people now have improved sources of water. But still, if you go to Africa, there are many people, particularly women, who have to walk many, many kilometers, miles, with just small water on their head. It's heartbreaking. And in 2023, nearly 2 billion people around the world still lack access to clean and safe drinking water. During my decade-long tenure as a Secretary General of the United Nations, I'm extremely proud to have brought the entire world together to agree to the Sustainable Development Goals. These include poverty, hunger, public health, education, inequality, climate change, gender equality, and others, which also constitute major pillars of UPI. The SDGs provide humanity and our planet with a collaborative blueprint to ensure the future we want. The main philosophical idea was that we asked the world's people, what kind of world do you want? What kind of world do you want? We reached out to all the people around the world, and we have received billions and millions of ideas from them. Therefore, SDGs are by far the most ambitious and far-reaching vision the United Nations has ever presented to the people of the world. Then I'm very much proud on this. This was really a sea change from the previous Sustainable Development Initiative, such as the Millennium Development Goals. And this also differs from other global governance benchmarks. Today, as we have passed the midway point, 8 years since the adoption, we have only 7 years to go. Whether these SDGs could be fulfilled, I have serious doubt. Of course, SDGs have made notable sustainable development progress, but this is especially true in terms of bettering maternal mortality rates, combating poverty and hunger, and improving the quality of water and sanitation globally. But progress is uneven, depending upon where you are living. According to the Sustainable Development Goals Report 2022, multiple and overlapping health and security crises have led to a reversal in SDG progress, and progress on climate and biodiversity goals is also too slow. But I firmly believe that we absolutely must keep moving forward together. At the same time, I'm confident that achieving the SDGs can bring us together to chart a more peaceful, sustainable, inclusive, and prosperous future for all people and our planet. So, we simply must forge ahead under the multilateral spirit of cooperation, partnership, and solidarity. In this regard, SDG 17 highlights the strong global partnership can play to connect humanity and help achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. As I said, not a single country in this world, however resourceful, however rich one may be, like the United States or Japan, you cannot do it alone. And the SDGs are a unique blueprint to rebuild back better, greener, more resilient from the pandemic, conflict, and climate shock. And they can bring us all together to chart a more peaceful and sustainable post-COVID-19 future. Crucially, we need increased political will and policy changes to scale up investment and action on SDG priority areas like hunger, health, education, quality education, peaceful societies, gender, and climate. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as biodiversity and habitat are destroyed due to environmental destruction, wild animals have increasingly come into closer contact with humans, and as a result, more and more novel viruses and pandemics have spread. Indeed, nearly all of the viruses that have emerged in the 21st century, from SARS in 2003 to COVID-19 today, share the characteristics being common infectious diseases that have jumped between animals and humans. As such, the climate crisis and the pandemics are two sides of the same coin, and inherently intertwined. Therefore, we need elevated ambition, action, and political will to slash carbon emissions, to implement the Paris Climate Change Agreement, and safeguard the future viability of both humanity and planet. This is particularly important ahead of this month's COP28 UN Climate Change Conference in the United Arab Emirates, Dubai. We urgently need enhanced initiative and efforts in the spheres of climate mitigation, adaptation, innovation, and finance to achieve the UN global goals, limit temperature rise, protect biodiversity, and save our planet. And if current trends continue, more than half of the globe's marine species may be all but extinct by 2100. Here I'd like to just warn you that many scientists are warning you that within 100 years, if we not take very urgent climate action, we may face the sixth mass extinction. Mass extinction means more than 70% of species, animal, including human being, will be perished. that when the fifth mass extinction happened, that happened, according to scientists, 65 million years ago. Then why should we suffer in this 21st century with the highest level of science and technology? Therefore, I believe that the Paris Climate Change Agreement still provides us with our best hope to persevere over the dire climate threats to the Earth. I have been repeatedly saying that we don't have a plan B because we don't have a planet B either. There's no other place you go. However, cuts in global greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 are still far away where they need to be in order to safeguard a livable world and thriving future for all. In 2023 alone, nearly 400 millimeters of extreme rainfall fell in Libya in a single day in September, catastrophically flooding communities and resulting in over 4,300 people dying. Boiling heat waves with temperature as high as 47 degrees Celsius blanketed the Mediterranean, prompting dire health alerts and shattering all-time records in Italy, Spain, and elsewhere. Deadly wildfires, like in the United States, richest country, and Canada, and many European countries were witnessed recently in even Hawaii, Canada. Frankly, if we do not act now, humanity's future survival will be greatly imperiled. At the heart of such action, there is no other way than to drastically slash the planet's greenhouse gas emissions on the road to net zero by 2050 and ensure just a transition. This will address energy shortages, improve human well-being, and catalyze cooperation. The IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that's an organization composed of 2,300 scientists, climatologists. They warn that we have just 7 years to go to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 50%. That means 2030. Then by 2050, we have to make all these greenhouse gas emissions zero, net to zero. Otherwise, climate change becomes catastrophic for humanity. This is why, again, we have to do all. The UN, this is why we have to provide financial support as one of the key pillars of the Paris Climate Change Agreement. It is also why upper-income countries, rich countries, must fulfill their promises to expand climate funding for developing countries and scale up financing for climate adaptation around the world. Indeed, equitable reinvestment of just 2% of global GDP by the global north, like including Japan, can go a long way in accelerating the development of key green technologies and infrastructure to help avoid climate catastrophe. In this regard, I have been engaged in the activities of Global Center on Adaptation, which is now headquartered in the Netherlands, as co-chairs of the supervisory board. GCA, Global Center on Adaptation, is trying to accelerate adaptation action and support the adaptation solutions around the world. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, despite the ongoing work of the United Nations for the achievement of the SDGs and responding to the climate crisis, the United Nations' overall role, effectiveness, and reputation are being harmed by the malfunctioning of the United Nations Security Council. The Security Council's gridlock and inaction is sadly blocking the realization of the United Nations Charter's raison d'etre of saving successive generations from the scourge of war. And this is also impacting global governance more largely. In this vein, I am of the view that the organizational reform is long overdue. Particularly, this includes the reforming the Security Council, which is too often paralyzed in responding to major crises, such as those in Ukraine or Gaza now at this time, causing deep institutional harm to reputation of the United Nations. Thank you for your support. Maybe. It's an important and ongoing process to ensure that the UN remains responsive to the geopolitical and humanitarian crisis of both today and tomorrow. With this in mind, I believe that the multilateral action rooted in prevention in partnership must steer the United Nations coordinated response forward to holistically address and respond to conflict in a changing global environment. However, unfortunately, we are witnessing a lack of requisite political will needed to make such prevention and partnership efforts successful. To help fill this vacuum and simultaneously expand crucial dialogue and the promotion of confidence-building measures to help prevent and resolve crises, the ongoing efforts of key multi-stakeholder partners, including important civil society voice like UPI, are greatly needed. Indeed, the UN Security Council and its member states, particularly those P5, so-called, who have veto powers, they should prioritize not only their national interest over peace and human lives, they have to look at global peace and human lives. Must never forget the bitter lessons of their own inaction in Rwanda, in Syria, now in Ukraine and Gaza today. And the Asia-Pacific region also finds itself under threat as a result of this deteriorating global security architecture. The US-China relationship is aggravating antagonism, deepening global divides, and casting a long shadow on international peace and security, especially in Asia and Pacific. This is epitomized by three capital Cs, such as competition, collaboration, and conflict. It's good to compete each other. It's also very good, necessary to collaborate rather than conflict. They're competing in the high-tech areas, including artificial intelligence, semiconductors, batteries, and others. They can collaborate on inherently global issues like climate change, sustainable development goals, terrorism, and cybersecurity. However, the risk of conflict and clashes between the two countries is growing, and thus, therefore, putting Asia and the world more largely at great risk. This is currently exemplified by the unprecedented military buildup and elevated tension transpiring in the region. At the same time, the Korean Peninsula faces ongoing perpetual threat as a result of North Korea and its leadership, which is singularly focused on weapons of mass destruction development. This takes the form of increasingly brazen ballistic missile tests, nuclear tests, and other various provocations that jeopardizes peace and security not only on the Korean Peninsula, but also regionally and globally as well. And North Korea has carried out such provocations, including over 100 not nuclear, but weapons tests since the start of 2022. Is a flagrant violation of numerous UN Security Council resolutions, as well as the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons Regime, NPT. At the same time, the North Korean regime simply does not care about the long-suffering North Koreans' well-being and basic human rights, or their country's inhibited socio-economic development. And this is all the more appalling considering North Korea's long history of food insecurity and malnutrition, which disproportionately impacts the most vulnerable groups, including children and the elderly. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, noting the inherent interrelation between the United Nations' three pillars, it is imperative for the international community to reaffirm human rights for all. We are now witnessing new threats and emerging challenges to human rights and other universal values in every corner of the world. Indeed, the unfortunate reality is that human rights violations have been heightened as of late by conflict, the global pandemic, the newly emerging technologies of AI, and entrenched authoritarian systems. Human rights protection should be secured for us all, including during conflict. And this is vital, as a human right constitute the building blocks that underpin inclusive and resilient communities. They offer a pathway to durable peace and post-conflict reconciliation, justice, and sustainable development. They are positioned at the top of our toolbox of countering terrorism and violent extremism. And they form the basis of peaceful, sustainable, and prosperous societies in which all people everywhere enjoy both dignity and opportunity. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, now more than ever before, we must illuminate a vibrant new pathway to confront the great challenges we face. This is true for building peace and resolving conflicts, ensuring sustainable development, taking decisive climate action, and empowering rejuvenated global governance. And as such, it is essential that we will all join together in partnership under the banner of reinvigorated multilateralism. In this process, the UN should be in the lead to wage peace, accelerate progress on the SDGs, and build back better in the post-COVID-19 era and spur urgent climate action. We must remember that the interconnected global challenges we face inherently require global solutions. In this regard, I commend this UPI SDGs Global Governance Summit 2023 for highlighting peace, development, human rights issues, and helping to accelerate timely SDGs and climate action in our warming world. Particularly, I applaud not only the realization of this summit and the recent conception of UPI more largely, but also that it has brought together so many leading women peace and rights advocates from all over the world. I take this opportunity to extend my highest appreciation for the ongoing efforts of UPI's founder, Mr. Minamichi Nishimura, as well as the dynamic Nobel laureates I have the honor to share to stage with them here today. Thank you very much for your leadership. I hope you will continue to work for world peace. I feel a particular affinity and connection with the work of UPI and also Nobel laureates in expanding multilateral cooperation and enhancing global governance with a view towards bringing people, communities, and nations together. In fact, the title of memoir, which I published 2 years ago, is titled Resolved, Uniting Nations, not United Nations, Uniting Nations in a Divided World. That's the title of a memoir. We can create the better future we want, one that is anchored in peace, sustainability, and inclusion for all people and our planet. But we must also remember that the challenges we face are simply too enormous to be left in the hands of a few leaders. We cannot do it. I cannot do it alone. Nobel laureates, you cannot do it alone. We have to join all our hands deck together. All of us need greater unity, solidarity, action, and compassion. Nobel laureate Satyarthi said compassion. I want to add passion. Passion and compassion. Passion and compassion should come together in this divided world. I am asking young people to have much more passion, but this passion should come with compassion, as Nobel laureate Satyarthi has mentioned. All of us have to collaborate across the borders and seas, generations, and cultures and religions. The challenges we are facing now are unprecedented. Thus, our response must be equally unprecedented, underpinned with peace, sustainability, resilience, justice, and compassion. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to close my 45-minute-long speech. Thank you for your bearing with my long speech. But I wish for the success of UPI's guiding vision and this summit, let us work together to realize a sustainable future for all our succeeding generations. This is our and your moral responsibility. And I'm also asking political leaders to bear political leadership. This is what we are here today. Let's work together. I wish you all the best. Thank you very much. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ban Ki-moon.